Hi, and welcome to Cocoa Disaster. I'm Chorp Sway.
And I'm Zane Zero.
And welcome to the show, Zane. You are here to talk about the seasonal stuff for this show.
Yep.
Now that Jordan's on his long absence, we have someone else, my, one other friend who pays attention to seasonal anime. Oh, God bless. But yeah, so, the season's coming to a close about now, and it's about time to look forward to the summer shows that are going to be happening. And it's time to talk about which ones we're excited for.
Heck yeah.
Which ones we're not. And which ones we're really not excited for. We missed a season of these, but boy howdy, I'm sure we would have had words to say about Arrow Manga Sensei. But
oh boy.
It's not time for that, because before we get into that, as always, it's time for the news, what we've been missing since the beginning of the season. So I've collected just some stuff from the industry that I thought, would be worth going a little bit in discussion of, because first off, the most important one, this story has been breaking all over the internet, and I still love it looking through these old news articles, is the love between a penguin and the Kimono Friends penguin.
Oh my god, I forgot about that. That was so... I forgot about it because it's been a while since anybody's actually mentioned it, but I love that.
Yeah, it's been like a month and a half. Yeah, it's to support zoos. And actually, it turns out that Kimono Friends has been, revitalizing zoos in the same way that, Token Ranbu helped revitalize, museums and stuff.
I didn't know about that second part.
Yeah, so Token Ranbu has gotten people really interested in swords, and people have been doing, recreations and, rebuilds of old swords. And now Kimono Friends is doing that, but for zoos. Thousands more people at a time are going to these zoos to see the animals based off their favorite anime girls.
That's incredible!
Yeah, and so also, one of the old penguins at one of these zoos found love with one of the cardboard cutouts of a penguin from the show, which is great. And then this penguin, Grape-kun, eventually got to meet the voice actress for the penguin character from Kimono Friends, and there's a really charming picture of them hanging out, and it's just, I'm so glad there's a happy ending for this poor old penguin who wants to fall in love again.
Bless this old otaku penguin.
Look, someone's finally sticking up for the rest of us in this crazy world. Yeah, it's great, and unfortunately the collaboration is ending later this month, and hopefully Grape will be able to accept the fact that his anime girlfriend is going to have to leave.
Oh no.
Now on some more serious news. So Amazon released Anime Strike the last season, and it's their paid service on Amazon Prime for their own anime stuff, now that they're really getting into the simulcasting business.
I'm still irritated by that whole pay through 2 paywalls thing.
Yeah, it's really frustrating that it not only requires you to pay Amazon Prime, but also that, or the Amazon Prime video-only service that they offered, and then still Anime Strike. It's a little frustrating, but they're trying to, sweeten the deal a bit on it. First off, they've done a partnership with Comixology, so that every month, at least of this year, you get a free digital manga volume through Comixology. And then they just started announcing that on mobile, they're going to be offering, offline downloads of anime episodes. So now, as a benefit, it's if you don't have the internet connection, you can still watch the stuff that they have on Amazon. And Amazon's got a really good quality video player, so being able to get that video quality even without internet is really nice.
Nice.
And I think Crunchyroll after this also announced that they're working on off-site downloads, so this is a good thing in general, even if this is Amazon kind of forcing Crunchyroll's hands into finding something to keep them more relevant. I think it's good that they have this thing here and that they're going to allow for episode downloads.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, and that's something that I think a lot of people would have wanted, so they don't have to worry about losing connection or whatever when they're watching their animes.
And definitely on, like, mobile, where it's going to be a little shakier on, like, people who take subways and stuff and lose internet connection a lot more, it's going to be a lot better for them to have this option.
Yeah, that's going to be cool.
Yeah. Then we've gotten a little more announcement of Production IG's Legends of the Galactic Heroes adaptation that they're doing.
Oh.
Yeah, so this got announced, I think, last year through just like a teaser image, but apparently in September, they're going to be showing off some of the new voice cast of characters that I think the voice actors probably died. It's an old show. And like staff, and they've got a promo video coming out September 20th. And that seems super cool, because Legend of the Galactic Heroes is like super well regarded as both a novel series and the anime adaptation that came out from 1988 to 2000 or whatever, because it's like 108 OVAs.
Yeah, I've heard it's a very popular show, and a lot of people really, like, recommend it.
Yeah, and it would be interesting to see it in something that's, like, maybe a little more accessible, if, like, Production IG is doing, like, a TV series or something for it. Because, especially Production IG seems to be one of the few studios that always seems ahead of their production schedule. Like, they have the freedom to be a couple episodes ahead, instead of always scrambling to get things ready for air date.
That's nice.
So yeah, so whatever they're doing with it, I'd be interested to see it, because, like, Legend of the Galactic Heroes sounds great, but also it's 108 episodes long. So it's, there might be a more palatable way to get into it in this day and age if they do this. Then we have a bit of film news, which is the Resident Evil studio is going to be producing a Hollywood Monster Hunter film.
Oh, right. I remember hearing about that.
Either late this year or early next year. And so they're already planning to reboot the Resident Evil movie series, but they're also planning a Monster Hunter movie for Hollywood. I don't know how that's going to turn out.
I have to ask why they're rebooting Resident Evil and doing this at the same time?
Well, look, they gotta keep milking that Resident Evil cash cow, because everyone loves those movies.
Someone does.
Everyone's always talking about how great those... Look, people go to see them. They're making a profit, so... And the plot of this is that an ordinary dude gets transported to the Monster Hunter world, and then comes back to the real world, where there is an epic battle in and around the Los Angeles airport.
This sounds like a light novel!
And so the image that they've given is, like, a Monster Hunter dragon, like, grabbing a plane out of the air and making it explode. And this just seems like what no one wants out of a Monster Hunter movie.
I have to agree.
Like, I get, like, some of these Hollywood movies, like, I get, like, they're trying to make it for this different audience, they're trying to do all this and that, but, like, I don't think anyone wants, like, this weird isekai, like, travel to another world and travel back light novel Monster Hunter thing. So, it's just weird. And also that it's being done by the Resident Evil team, which, I mean, they're making money, but I don't think a lot of people really, like, respect those Resident Evil movies.
I don't think so either.
Yeah. And then there is a Japanese-Hong Kong team-up that are producing an English-language live-action Saint Seiya movie?
Okay.
Which, I guess that makes more sense. I mean, it's not quite Hollywood, but it's being made for the English audience, so it's kind of Hollywood. And, like, I guess Saint Seiya makes sense because, like, there's a plot to it, you could follow it. It just also seems like a weird thing where, like, Saint Seiya doesn't seem like it's been super relevant in general. Like, it's getting new series, but it's really built up by its, like, South American, Filipino fan base who are very added, or, like, very strong. They feel strongly about the series.
Maybe that's the target audience for this movie?
Maybe. I mean, I wouldn't be too surprised, but it just seems like, again, like, some of these picks are strange. Like, they've announced that they're doing that Beyblade live-action movie, which they could probably do, because you make it, like, a big, flashy, stupid kids movie. You could probably make it work.
Will it have Moses parting the ocean with a Beyblade?
God, I hope so. Man, just put all of the worst parts of the Beyblade, like, world canon in, and just really, like, go whole hog on it.
That would be incredible.
Yeah, bring in Bay Wheels, you know what? Just go the whole hog, just bring in everything Beyblade you can. And, yeah, I just don't know. We just haven't had a good American adaptation of an anime. I mean, besides, like, Live, Die, Repeat, or,
And it's getting a sequel somehow.
Yeah, Live, Die, Repeat's getting a sequel, which is weird, but, you know, I think that concept and the way that they reworked it worked for an American audience in the way that, like, these very distinctly Japanese ideas maybe don't in, like, a general American audience.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see how Saint Seiya turns out, but I don't expect a lot from it. Then, in other movie news, Hayao Miyazaki's out of retirement again. He's doing his final movie again.
Please, retire.
He can just retire. But it seems like Studio Ghibli is just starting to, like, hit a stride where they don't need Hayao Miyazaki anymore as a director. Like, they're finally starting to, like, put out things that are successful.
That's good.
But then Hayao Miyazaki's like, oh, I was doing this short for them one last time, and I decided I needed more time. I need the movie. So he's doing another movie. He's got a 3-year production cycle on it, and boy howdy.
Speaking of Studio Ghibli, there's also Ni no Kuni 2.
Yeah, Ni no Kuni 2 is happening, and they're not part of it, are they? I think Studio Ghibli actually might not be part of Ni no Kuni 2.
That's weird. That was like one of the big selling points for the first game.
Yeah, you'd think they'd bring it back, but
I think they got the same sound guy.
The visuals and everything are the same, but I think they're not getting any animation from Studio Ghibli done, which is weird.
Yeah.
That seems strange, but, you know, that's, you know, business happens.
Yeah.
And then one other thing that I thought was really neat is Aniplex is maybe, like, loosening their tie on their properties a little bit. They have released now 2 movies to Crunchyroll for streaming, which is really nice because unlike television series and stuff, you don't generally get to see movies unless you buy them. And so this is a much better way of handling it because it's a try before you buy sort of thing. You want to see the movie in really great quality, you can then go buy the disc, but there's no way to actually, like, try out a movie especially with Aniplex. With Aniplex makes it like $60. Like, they have highly inflated prices compared to a lot of other people when it comes to these sorts of, like, movies and anime Blu-rays.
Yeah, that sounds like what I've heard.
Yeah, but Aniplex has these 2 movies based on Vocaloid songs, the Confession Executive Committee series. And it seems like, first of all, that might be the first good, like, Vocaloid adaptation of anything, because it's not some weird, like, magical sort of thing that they have to deal with.
Also, it's not I'm pretty sure there was, like, an anime series based on one of the songs.
Well, okay, so there's Black Rock Shooter the OVA, and then there was Black Rock Shooter the anime series. And then there was Mikagura's School Suite, the animated series, and then there was, Mikaku City Actors, the animated series. And as far as I understand, all of those were, like, to bad.
Ah.
And these ones seem to be getting better reviews. But, like, it's just cool to consider in the streaming age, the ability to be able to check out these movies before you buy them and, you know, have a chance to really understand what they're about before you get into something that maybe turns out bad.
That's good.
Yeah, it's something that I hope becomes more popular, is to put up movies for streaming and stuff. Like, Netflix does that with, like, you know, they did it with Blame, and they've done it with other things, but just I'd like to see more of that in general. And speaking of Netflix, they finally announced the first half of Little Witch Academia going up.
The first half.
The first half, which is happening June 30th, so the end of this month. They're putting up the first 13 episodes of the TV series. I'm assuming, again, that they cut it up because what they do, like with all their other series, is that they're, like, dubbing it and stuff and putting it out like that. Because, I mean, Netflix maybe doesn't get anime audiences, but the people that they do do business for in general are like binge watchers and stuff like that. So they've got their business model and they're sticking to it.
I mean, it's also US Netflix because Little Witch Academia.
Yeah, no, Japanese Netflix does it.
Yeah, it's really weird. And as somebody who's been watching Little Witch Academia, it's kind of a shame that they're not doing the entire series because the first half of the show is a bit weaker than the second half.
Yeah, and also, like, there's not a real good splitting point. Like, it's a weird series to do that to, and it's unfortunate, but, like, you know, Netflix has got its own thing, and I think one thing that I do appreciate of Netflix is that they're trying their most to make this sort of stuff accessible by having all these dubs and stuff, which is appreciated.
Yeah, I hope the dub winds up being good, because that can definitely make a show better to watch as if it's acted well.
Yeah, because then you have watching it a second time becomes more enticing because you get this different acting, you get a different perspective on it, and hopefully it's good.
Yeah, I think I know where they're splitting it. It's right before, like, the main villain is introduced, so that's a decent place to split it.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Now that they're finally getting to the whole, like, actual big plot part of the show. But yeah, I hope that's cool, because I hear that the dub for the movies and OVA were pretty good, and hopefully they can continue that through the anime series.
Yeah, that would be cool.
And then, in a really weird turn, Little Witch Academia also happens to be the subject of maybe one of the first, like, anime tie-in video games of this generation.
Well, ones that aren't Dragon Ball Z.
Right, like ones that aren't Dragon Ball Z and also aren't just, like, on the 3DS. Like, Little Witch Academia is getting a fully fledged PlayStation 4 video game this year.
Yeah, that's surprising.
Yeah, and it's like, it seems like it's part exploration and part, like, 3D brawler, kind of?
Yeah, that's what I remember seeing from the screenshots of it.
Yeah, and it that seems neat. Like, if that comes over to the West, that would be really cool. Because anime tie-in is a genre of video games that has been dying out as, like, video games get more expensive to make. And I think it's kind of a shame. Like, there's something really charming about even bad, like, video game adaptations of anime. But hopefully this one's good. It looks neat. Like, they've got the aesthetic of the series down pretty well in terms of visuals.
Yeah, I just want to know what the gameplay actually looks like in motion.
Yeah, what the gameplay's like in motion, and also just, like, what is it? Like, is it a retelling of the story? Is it, like, a weird side thing that they're doing?
I think I remember hearing that it's not related to the story.
That would make sense. I mean, you don't want to tie yourself down like that, and I don't know, it does seem cool. I'm interested to see how that turns out, but it was just weird hearing, like, Little Witch Academia, of all things, is the first thing to get, like, a console adaptation that isn't, like, Dragon Ball Z.
Or a Muso game.
Yeah, because, like, I would have expected, like, maybe My Hero Academia to get, like, the Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm treatment by this point and made, like, a 3D fighting game out of it.
That would be pretty good.
Yeah, like, that seems, like, well put for it, and, like, the JoJo ones came out, but those are... Yeah,
is pretty much what I've heard of. Like, it's a great game for JoJo fans, but it's not a great game.
Yeah, it's not a great game, but it's full of fan service. And also, like, really bad localizations like Flaccid Pancake and D4C and all those great names that you've heard before. Worst Company.
Flaccid Pancake is incredible. You take that back.
Look, if you have to censor Limp Bizkit, you might as well go for just the most absurd one you can. And Flaccid Pancake works it out. And then it's just some general other announcement stuff. The Record of Lodos creator is putting together a new TV series called Record of Grand Crest War, which is based on another light novel series that he's worked on. That's coming out early 2018. And, like, Record of Lodos War was its own kind of weird, cool thing of, like, a D&D campaign turned into an anime that worked. Unlike Chaos Dragon, the other one like that.
The very wordy one.
Yes, oh boy. But, like, the idea of this guy getting another TV series, if it's going to be another, like, sort of, like, high fantasy action thing seems kind of cool because even as good as Lodos War might be, it's dated. You know, it's been a while since it came out. So something that has a bit more kind of like, I guess a little more like modern talent behind it could make it look really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, you know, fantasy is an overstuffed genre, to be fair, but like done well, it's still a good thing. Like fantasy is still fun and it's got a lot of cool adventure stuff that you can put into it. So I'm interested to see how this turns out.
Yeah, there can definitely be some good fantasy, like even just recently there was a Grimoire of Zero, which was fantasy done well.
Yeah, like, and, you know, there's also been fantasy done bad, but like, that's just because it's a genre that's not as hard to write because you just get to make up stuff.
Maybe the reason why there's so much bad of it is because so much of it recently has been the, oh, I'm in another world now stuff.
Yeah. It's a lot of, oh, here I am falling into another world. And, like, that all just ends up falling into the same tropes, except for maybe, like, what's that? Grimoire and Ash, or that one from last year. Like, the one where it actually is a bunch of people who have no idea how to fight, and they have an episode where they just try to kill one goblin, and they all have, like, incredible trouble.
Ah, that sounds great.
And then other stuff coming out 2018. KyoAni finally announced when their TV anime for Violet Evergarden is coming out, which was like one of the first light novels that they published under the KyoAni name, and like they made all these commercials and stuff for it, and they just never announced that they were doing an anime for it, even though that's clearly what they were going to do. Because KyoAni's just gotten to the point where they publish light novels and then make anime adaptations out of them. That's their life. And you know what? All the better for them, because they've made it so they only do anime that they want to do.
I just hope it's not as bad as Phantom World.
Yeah, like it seems a lot less, I mean, it seems a lot more serious. It seems to be kind of more based around following the adventures of like a servant robot and sort of the experiences they have with different families, which might be interesting. It seems like there's a weird amount of action to it as well. Like, I'm not sure exactly where it falls genre-wise, but like, KyoAni makes really good-looking things.
KyoAni makes really good action scenes when they feel like it.
Yeah, like, it just feels like KyoAni hasn't had like a real breakout hit in a while. Like, people liked Sound Euphonium, but Sound Euphonium, like, as far as I understand, didn't sell great and wasn't like, you know, like a sensation. Like, the fans were really big about it, but it wasn't like selling incredibly, and Phantom World sold poorly.
I mean, they also did Maid Dragon recently.
Yeah, and I don't know how the sales on that are looking, but like they did do Miss Kobayashi, which seemed popular, but you know, I don't know. I'd like them to get back to something I want to watch them.
That's fair.
It's really what it comes down to. No, it's just one of those things where like this seems like a tone that maybe they haven't gone for in a while.
Yeah.
Is something a little more like introspective and like action oriented, and that might be cool.
Yeah.
Then other stuff coming out, Production IG is working on a vertical anime app for smartphones. So instead of holding it landscape, you hold it portrait, and they're writing a bunch of anime specifically for that format. Like, so it's going to be 9:16.
Ah, the long anime.
So it's weird because it reminds me a lot of what people complain about, like, Korean, Chinese webcomics, is that they are all built for smartphone. So they're all very long in the pages.
Oh yeah, they're basically just one giant thing that you scroll down.
Yeah, so I don't know how this is going to turn out, but it's an interesting idea, is what I'm coming out of it with. And like, this is definitely something for Japan because, you know, Japan it has a different smartphone culture surrounding it.
Yeah.
And specifically, it seems to be aiming for people who like don't have a television so that they can watch anime on the go like this, which is interesting. I'm interested to see what the opinion ends up being on it and if they can keep up sort of the, like, continuing to have shows pop up for this app.
I'm just curious what the shows are and how they're gonna, like, take advantage of it.
Yeah, like, I know, like, there are a couple already announced, and there are things, like, based on mascots or 4-panel mangas, or there's one that's, like, African animals, but in business suits. Like, it seems so far that it's a lot of shorts, and I wonder if this blows up, if this becomes, like, a more popular thing that they start building shows and hiring studios for.
It'll be interesting if it turns out.
Yeah, and then Sunrise is helping to co-produce a live-action Cowboy Bebop English TV series, which can't possibly be good.
What could possibly go wrong?
I've been thinking about it a lot, and like it's the writer for the Thor movie is on it, so I'm not sure, and it seems to be like a pretty small studio working on it, so I'm not sure how that's going to turn out at this point. It's going to be weird, and I'm not... Keanu Reeves really wanted to be Spike in a Cowboy Bebop movie adaptation. Unfortunately, they're probably not going to be able to get him, but, you know, we can dream.
That would be great.
Keanu Reeves, I think, has been vying for this for years now. Is to be in a live-action film with this, because I think at some point they were planning on it, and it just fell through for one reason or another. But for some reason, the Akira movie's still being worked on, and not that, so... But, you know, man, have they done... I don't think there's been another, like, live-action TV series of anime done for American audiences.
Well, there's the Death Note one coming.
That's a movie.
Is it?
Yeah, the Death Note one's a movie on Netflix.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not like a mini-series. And that also looks bad.
Yeah, it does.
And so I just don't know. Cowboy Bebop might be interesting, but I think it's more likely to be bad.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. And then, that's all the big news. Just a lot of stuff that got announced that's, like, weird or interesting, and it makes me excited to see kind of stuff that comes out of, like, next year and stuff, and just as anime moves forward, because not like there's a new bubble, but, like, there's clearly a bigger worldwide interest in it, you know, with Death Note coming out, with the Robotech movie coming out, with Battle Angel Alita coming out, with people still talking about the Akira movie. Like, in the West, there's now this more bigger push for like, Japanese licenses. And maybe eventually we'll reach the point where we can make a good one, you know?
Maybe.
It's not going to be the Naruto movie, but maybe, like, the Beyblade movie. It's not going to be the Bleach movie.
It'll be the Bort movie.
Oh, thank God, they're going to make a Boruto movie after the 17-movie series that finally gets the Naruto story done. And with that news out of the way, I think it's time for us to talk about the shows we're going to be watching next season.
Woo!
We're following the usual format, so we'll start with what shows we're continuing on to this season, and then we'll slowly go down the list of things we're interested in until we finally reach the shows that we can't possibly imagine being good.
Yeah.
And to start this off, we actually have quite a few shows continuing on to next season, which was kind of surprised. I'm so used to thinking of shows like, oh, they're only 12 episodes, that is weird seeing like 5 listed here as like, oh, we're going to continue on with this.
Yeah.
Yeah. First one up is probably the most prominent of the longer running series from this season, which is My Hero Academia's second season.
Woo!
Which has been going really well. Like, the first season was good, but everyone kind of talked about how it wasn't maybe the best pacing.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, the first season of the anime was in production from, like, fairly early on in the manga, so that's kind of why it was paced so slowly.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like if they had put more in, they would have had a good cutting off point, because of how big this new season is with, like, the sports festival and everything.
Yeah, which just wrapped up today.
So it's like really, it's just kind of an unfortunate thing where, like, it starts out slow because we couldn't possibly, in 13 episodes, cover anything more than that.
Yeah, I'm glad they were able to get that second season so they get to all of this more faster-paced stuff.
Yeah, like, the sports festival has been, like, really cool. There's been a lot of neat action to it and a lot of good character building. And I don't know what's going to happen in the second half of the series, but like, I don't know, it feels like it's been paying off in a lot of ways with these characters and their motivations and kind of building on these powers in a way that's going to be cool for whatever the next, like, villain fight is going to be.
Which I believe we got a preview of in the last episode.
Yeah, the hero killer.
The hero killer Stain, who looks like he came straight out of the 90s.
Yeah, he looks a lot... And this is something that I think is just true of a number of the characters. He really looks like an edgy, maybe like Punisher-esque, like American pulp novel villain.
Yeah.
Or like anti-hero that they would have created.
Yeah, Horikoshi is a big fan of American superheroes, so he definitely has like all the references he needs for that kind of stuff.
And you see that in a lot of the like designs for the outfits too, like All Might and stuff like that. And who's the lady judge in the sports festival?
Midnight.
Yeah, Midnight. Midnight extremely looks like an American comic character.
Yeah, it's so great.
Yeah, it's wild, but it's been a cool series so far, and I'm excited to see how they finish out this season. And then next up is Recreators, which both of us are watching still. Recreators is kind of a weird show that we'll go more into on the review episode, but it's basically it's a battle royale thing of all your favorite anime archetypes fighting and sort of like philosophizing towards each other that I feel like shouldn't work, and maybe early on didn't, but it's been really coming into itself as it's continued on.
Yeah, it's definitely starting to come into its own, and you kind of get more an idea of what like the sort of rules that they're trying to follow are. Yeah.
And like as the characters are being introduced, I think that helps a lot because like early on it's predominantly people on two opposing sides who have very similar goals but very different interests in how they go about that. And they've started adding in a chaotic character who's basically just there to ruin everyone's life. And I think that is a really good benefit of like having someone who has no allegiance and really just wants to see the world burn. Because that helps push forward these conflicts and these ideals as they go into them.
Yeah, I just sort of hope that people stop getting tricked by this character because it's getting a little tiresome at this point.
Yeah, it is definitely like... But also this character has like really poorly like explained powers, which hopefully gets a little bit better as they go on, or they're able to like flip her powers on her head. Like, I want to see something happen with her that isn't just her winning at this point. But like, Recreators, I think, has found its pace and is starting to do something really cool with it.
Yeah, I hope it turns itself around and becomes a better show in the second core.
Yeah, and you know what? Sawano always makes a good soundtrack for what he does, which is like dumb action shit. This is perfect for dumb action shit music.
It really is.
On the completely opposite end of the spectrum is Sakura Quest, which both of us are watching as well. And so Sakura Quest comes off of the heels of PA Works' other like working anime, Shirobako. And while Shirobako was a lot more interested in the industry and kind of giving an insight into how everyone works within it, this is a lot goofier and a lot more character based. Like it's a lot more about the people who work in this tourism board than it is about rural tourism.
Yeah, it's definitely an anime about how hard it is to find your place in your life when you're like just out of college or in the middle of that kind of transition between being a student and being an adult.
Yeah, and I mean, it does have plenty of stuff about kind of the things that people do to try to stimulate tourism to rural areas, like kind of like, you know, they do like these dating tours and they do these other like kind of cooking events to try to give an identity to this place. But it is still very much about these characters, and they're all interesting because they all have different views on belonging and, you know, work and their place in life. And they don't like conflict, but occasionally like they have ideals that don't gel with each other, and so they have to talk it out.
Yeah, and those are some of the really good parts of the show, is seeing this inner character conflict.
Yeah, like, it's had some downs as it builds up these characters, but I feel like all of the resolution to these issues have been really strong, especially like the most recent episode with Ririko. And it's cool. I'm excited to see more of it.
Yeah, same here. Also to see more of the Bard, who is secretly becoming an incredible character.
Yeah, Sandal is a weird character because he seems like a goofy one-off to start. Like, he's a non-native guy who comes to Japan just kind of to wander, but he's become more important, and he's got he's got a backstory that belongs with the city, and it's weird how much he's fitting in.
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah, and I think he is in fact Japanese second language. Which is nice as well, because it fits with the whole, like, outsider thing. You can tell he has a bit of an accent, and he's very good at pronouncing English words.
Yes, he very much is.
Then next up is one I tried to keep up with but didn't, but you're sticking with, which is Sagrada Reset.
Yes, I'm still trying to figure out why that is, but I don't understand why I'm still watching this show, and that's maybe why I'm still watching this show, but but Sagrada Reset is essentially about this town where people have these weird abilities, but if you leave this town, you forget, like, what your ability was and what abilities are, and the main character comes to this town because he's curious about the abilities, but the main crux of this show is that basically he and a girlfriend of his that he met during middle school named Haruki, they work together to solve cases involving events because Haruki has the ability to turn back time up to 3 days, which she sets save points. And the main character's power is that he can remember things. He has a photogenic memory, so he is the only one who can remember what happened in these previous loops, and he uses that knowledge to solve these problems. And if this sounds interesting, it is a lot less interesting than I am making it sound, because this show has some extremely stiff direction, where they linger on shots a lot.
Like, really static shots, too.
Yeah, it's really weird, but the powers and the way they use them are interesting. Like, one character has the power to essentially to see through a cat's eyes, and she can only do this by falling asleep, but when she falls asleep, she can, like, see through any cat in the city, so she uses this to gather information. And another character who can drain the knowledge out of people. It's really weird that they do have some interesting setups with these powers, but they also spend a lot of time talking about nothing.
Yeah, like, that was the big thing, is there's a lot of promise to that idea, and, like, sometimes it delivers on it, but so much of it is this weird, stiff philosophizing to the audience, and it's just, like, it feels like its actual content is in contrast with its setup.
It is, and it's really even more baffling because all that philosophizing managed to actually have a point to something in the previous episode, and it just... After that, they decided, oh, well, all that philosophizing and a major event happened. You know what you want to watch next? A slice of life episode about the emotionless girl. That's what you want to watch next.
Yeah, like, it's just... I dropped it because it's, like, the pacing and everything just feels so off, but I'm guessing you're sticking with it because, like, the concept is still, like, good. Just the actual execution maybe isn't.
I mean, so the execution, when it does actually pay off, is pretty good when they actually use their powers to cooperate. Like, I don't want to spoil anything until we get to the actual review episode, but they use their powers in an actual really cool way, and the payoff from all of that was really cool, and I'm sad that they don't do that stuff more often, because it's so much talking about nothing. I'm still gonna watch it because I don't know. I still don't know why I'm still watching this show, but it's interesting in a way that no other show is because of how the work takes itself, I guess?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it feels like the show wants you to take it in a I don't know. It's hard to explain. I still can't explain it. Maybe by the review episode I'll figure it out.
All right. But sticking with that, and then I am sticking with the most important anime, Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains.
I've heard some things about Vrains.
Oh man, it's so good. So first of all, Vrains stands for some bullshit. It's Virtual Reality Artificial Intelligence Network System.
It rules!
Yeah, and so this is Yu-Gi-Oh!, but they go into VR to duel, and there are like two Illuminatis, and they're vying for this like the location of a part of internet that creates data. It's super dumb, perfectly for Yu-Gi-Oh!, and gives the most important thing is it gives a really competent protagonist. And it has come up with an alternative duel style that has really sped up, I think, the game. So it can focus more on the characters and on these particular strategies they're building. Like, the game field itself is much smaller, and the game has just completely changed because of the new cards and stuff they've added to the series. So I think that's, it's pretty cool in that you don't have to understand a lot of what happened previously in Yu-Gi-Oh! To get it in terms of rules, just because so much has changed. But, like, it also seems to be, like, a little more like Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, where it's taking a more serious look at characters and story, but under the veil of this just batshit insane story that they've built up about this VR world and the Illuminatis that want to take over it. It's really good, and I'm really excited for more of it. I was surprised by Arc 5 coming off of how bad Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal was, in my opinion, because I know people will fight me about that for some reason. But I'm really excited for Vrains. Vrains seems cool.
Look, I did not know the Illuminati was involved in this, but I do know that Vrains has a card called DDoS Attack.
Yes, it has a DDoS attack. They say DDoS attack in English for it. It's great.
That's incredible. That's like how they say MacGuffin in Sagrada Reset.
Yeah, like, and it really plays into sort of the tech stuff. Like, everything is based around this tech, and like it's sort of it's got that thing where, like, in VR you have your own avatar, so people don't know who you are, and so there's a bit of like, oh, we need to find this person in the real world based on their like login data and like their access points, and so they're like hacking into the VR to erase their login notices so that people don't know where they are.
Incredible!
Oh, it's so good. Oh, it's great. If you're interested in the most distilled version of Yu-Gi-Oh!, I think watching the first couple episodes of Vrains will give you the perfect setup for it. Oh, it's good. But yeah, I'm sticking with that, and it started late in the season, but I'm still very excited about where it can go from here, because it's really just setting up right now, like getting the core cast together. And so next up is where we get to the real new shows. So first up is our very interested list. These are shows that we're definitely watching and we're going to be looking forward to, like the stuff that seems to have promise to it. And first up is the one that both of us are still watching, or both of us are going to be watching. Welcome to the Ballroom, or Ballroom e Youkuso.
Yeah.
I've just heard a lot of really good things about the manga.
Yeah, that's pretty much my experience with it too.
And the hope here is that when they put it to animation, that they'll be able to capture sort of the dynamicism of ballroom dancing. Because this is kind of like Yuri on Ice. It focuses on a less traditionally like respected or thought about sport. So they have a lot of opportunity here to build something really neat that puts interest on this sort of niche sport.
Yeah, from what I saw from the preview, it seems like it's going to have a lot of really dynamic animation to it.
Yeah, and it's definitely got that sort of like... this is done by Production IG, and it's got that very like Haikyuu style exaggerated body stuff that is brought over from the manga, but definitely like that sort of exaggeration, very large sort of bodies helps to even make that more dynamic, is the ability to just kind of put more emphasis on these huge motions.
Yeah.
And I'm just really excited. I hear a lot of cool things about it, and it seems like they're putting in the work to make this look really good. Like, even the CG bits are surprisingly well done, from what I've seen from the PV, so hopefully that sticks through.
Yeah, I'm just excited to see how it just does the style, and also it seems like the soundtrack is going to be really, really good.
Yeah, they've got Unison Square Garden on OP, which is nice after they did such a great ED for Blood Blockade Battlefront.
Oh yeah.
That was a real banger, and I'm hoping that they keep up with that and that the actual soundtrack is just as good. We then have one that I'm watching, Kakegurui, which is based on a gambling manga, and this is being done at Studio Mappa. And the basic summary is kind of like older series like Gamblefish, except good, where it's this private academy that's built around sort of this meritocracy based on how good you are at gambling. And so you come into school with a certain amount of money, and basically you're gambling with other people to gain status in the series. And so if you lose all your money, you basically become like a slave to other characters. And it's about this girl who comes into the school who isn't particularly wealthy, but is obsessed with gambling and like the high stakes that come with the possibility of basically losing your life from it. And I think it's really well done because it never feels like they solve it through magic or pure luck. Like, it's a gambling series where the odds are stacked against these characters, and they find like a legitimate exploit or something in order to solve it. Like, they actually solve a puzzle rather than just being like, oh, well, I happened to win because, I cheated, or, something like that. Like, it feels like it's a legitimate win.
That's pretty cool, because I'm also kind of interested in this show, and if the first, episode or two comes out well, I'm probably going to jump on it.
Yeah, and, Gamblefish had that issue where everything was either the main character cheated or really just lucked into winning, and this show avoids that really well. The animation and, character stuff is really well done. My only issue is that the anime seems to be doubling down on my least favorite part of it, which is sort of the, pseudo-orgasmic sort of, reaction shots. Because it is about characters who just, are really deep into gambling and these incredible death stakes that can come with it. And so that's unfortunate, but the actual content of the series is what I'm excited about. And it'll be really cool to have another, good gambling anime to come out of it. And also the soundtrack is by maybe my favorite named band, which is the Techno Boys Polcraft Green Fund, who have done work on soundtracks I like Witchcraft Works and stuff, and they're pretty cool.
That is a pretty incredible band name.
I love band names in Japan because they're, when they're just, random English words, because they put them together in such the best ways.
That just makes me think of Ogre You Asshole. Or Ogre Your Asshole from, they were one of the bands that did some of the soundtrack for Space Dandy.
Oh, awesome. That's great.
But yeah, the way I didn't understand what you meant by gross reaction faces when you described it to me before, but that just makes you think, oh, it's like Food Wars.
Kind of like Food Wars, or maybe a little, I guess, Prison School-y in the way that it's done. It is definitely, sort of supposed to be sort of, off-putting and, disturbing, which it is. But it's just the one part that, kind of irks me about the series, is because otherwise it's, a really grounded sort of thing, just full of, these crazy characters who are just very into different forms of, gambling their life away.
That's cool.
Yeah, with 12 episodes, they'll probably reach the end of the introduction, as it were. You'll meet all of the main players right before there's, sort of a tournament arc, which seems like a good stopping point, and there's a lot of really good gambles in there, so I'm excited to see how they turn out animated.
Cool.
This next one up here is one where the series is way too large for me to ever think of getting in. But you're watching, which is Fate Apocrypha.
Yes. Well, you say this is actually one of the more accessible parts of it because it has nothing to do with anything else.
Oh, well, that makes it a lot easier to imagine getting into.
Yeah, it's like its own continuity or whatever, but basically, Fate Apocrypha was originally like some discarded material that was going to be its own thing, but then it Fate resparked in popularity, and hey, now it's its own thing. But basically, it's the concept of Fate is basically, historical figures and mythical characters actually existed and they were ridiculously powerful. And, it's them fighting each other for the Holy Grail, which can grant a wish, but Fate Apocrypha turns it around a bit by making, basically this one, magic family, which, has the most ridiculous last name ever, Yeeged Millennia.
Okay.
They stole a copy of the Holy Grail and summoned a whole bunch of servants from it, so this caused the big magical group to basically summon their own pack of servants, so it's basically 7 servants against 7 servants, and it's basically the story of this big war between these two superpowered sides doing completely ridiculous bullshit, and that's pretty much why I'm excited for it, is mythical figures doing completely ridiculous superpowered bullshit against each other, and
right, like that
great.
Seems like the big thing of Fate, but there's also like a lot of talking in Fate, like a lot of talking.
Yeah, there's also a lot talking. There's also a lot of talking, and I love them talking about complete bullshit.
All right,
like just technobabble nonsense, and it's pretty ridiculous.
Like the idea of Fate Apocrypha not having to have knowledge of the rest of the series, like if it's a spin-off, makes me a little more interested in possibly picking it up, because like it's not what's the studio that does all the other Fate stuff?
Continuity, and it's Ufotable.
Well, that too. Yeah, Ufotable is not doing it. It's A1 Pictures, which that's its own thing, but it really does give this idea that it is a spin-off, and A1 at least makes things look good when they work on it. So maybe I'll look into it if I find myself wanting for anime this season.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it because there's a couple fan favorite characters that people are looking forward to seeing animated in this.
All right, that's cool. And then this one's on here because I'm a garbage man. It's TQ season 9. TQ. Okay, so if you've listened through the entirety of Coco Disaster's archives, you may know that maybe we were a little down on TQ before. Like, we thought maybe it was going to be bad and we hadn't watched it. But TQ is maybe the one, like, fast-paced, frantic comedy series that I can like, get into. I appreciate TQ, even if it has its share of misses. It's so breakneck that you're immediately assaulted by another joke that probably works better. And it's not like super monkey cheese, like random. Like all the characters have their own like particular thing that they do, and maybe that the things they do are absurd and ridiculous, but they're all grounded in the tropes that they embody, which is a benefit. It's not just like, oh, here's a random thing and here's a different one. Like all the characters have an archetype that they follow, and that's a benefit to it. And like TQ's 2 minutes of my life every week, that's plenty to give for, this on and off frantic comedy series.
That reminds me that we didn't mention something back in the news section.
Oh, what's that?
That Inferno Cop Season 2 got announced.
Oh, you're right. I totally forgot that Inferno Cop Season 2 got announced. Oh, man. Trigger's bringing it back.
Yep, Anime of the Century, back again.
Which is weird, because, like, I feel like... Did Ninja Slayer do super well? Because I feel like that would have been, like, a kicker for, oh, maybe this particular type of comedy is dead.
I mean, I think it's going back to being, like, 2 minutes long, because they realize that they can't really stretch out that joke for a full length of show.
That's fair. And Inferno Cop had a benefit when it didn't get, like, super plotty of being, like, a one-and-done, like, quick joke. Like, when they fought the Crab Man, like, I think my favorite thing about that series is the bit where he kills the Crab Man. It's like, oh, I'm impervious to your bullets, and it bounces off him and it says, so am I, and it bounces off Inferno Cop, and that's enough to kill the Crab Man. Like, there's a charming sorts of zaniness to parts of it that a second season might be cool, yeah.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by Inferno Cop's extremely goofy cameo in Luluko, which was also a shorter series, which I think works well.
For sure. On a more serious note, we have The Reflection Wave 1 that you're watching.
Yes.
And this is interesting because it is, I think, Stan Lee's second attempt at an original anime series, coming off of Hero Man in 2006.
Yeah, I don't think I was watching anime back when Hero Man aired, so you probably know more about it than me.
I don't know a ton. I actually learned about it because I looked up stuff about The Reflection. Hero Man, I don't think it did super well, but is sort of like, it's Stan Lee's basically like a hero for the 21st century. It's based around like technology and stuff, like a big robot suit for a dude. And this is different, but still like Stan Lee heading it. So there's still something interesting to be mined out of a premise like this.
Yeah.
It's basically just like superheroes pop up in the world. Why and how and what does this cause to the world? We'll find out. Is kind of how it's given.
Yeah, the premise kind of reminds me of Concrete Revoludio, which is a similar sort of thing, but hopefully this won't be nearly as hard to keep track of for viewers, because I know that was a problem a lot of people had with that show.
Yeah, I assume it's going to have a lot more like straightforward sort of like plot. We're not going to be dealing with like Cold War stuff coming back in.
Yeah, it's just going to be this straightforward show about what if superheroes suddenly appeared in the world, and I kind of like that concept, and I was interested in it, but then I found out that Stan Lee was doing it, and now I'm even more interested in it because it seems like it's going to be something with a different vibe than other shows have got going on.
Yeah, and like the costumes and stuff are pretty cool. They're very like Iron Man-esque from what he's shown and stuff, so it seems like there's a neat blending there. And also, the main PV for it has Stan Lee talking about how much he loves this show that he's going to be working on. And he keeps referring to it as a Japanese cartoon. He's like, the cartoon is Japanese, but I think people of all ages and nationalities will love it. And there's something charming about Stan Lee in 2017 getting so excited about this superhero thing he's working on.
It's nice to see that kind of excitement, though.
Yeah, and like Studio Dean has been on the up and up, I feel, for a while now, with just like some really quality adaptations and stuff. So this is another shot at Studio Dean really like proving itself, even if it's not in story, at least in the animation quality and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last one on here is, okay, so for the last couple seasons, I've been watching this show that I don't know if I could explain the draw of it. It is extremely for children, called Forest Fairy 5. And it's about a group of 5 girls who are based on mushrooms who just like hang out and do stuff. And it's like sometimes kid-based where they're like trying to teach something about the world. Like they'll interview people from the real world and they're actually live action footage. They're like, oh, here are the jobs that people do. And then sometimes there are episodes where like, I accidentally used his magic spell to turn into curry. Like, it is definitely like wacky, goofy in a kid way. And I don't know why I keep watching it, but I do because I'm like fascinated by the existence of this thing that's like, that's sort of like maybe Dora the Explorer age sort of cartoon doesn't come over much. And there's something fascinating about it because the newest season is like, it's basically like a fractured fairy tales thing where they're taking these Japanese folklore and stuff and just kind of like mashing them together and trying to make a comprehensive story out of like, oh, you know, this character from mythology meets this other one and they sort of do one of the missions for one of the characters. It's just one of those things where I can't look away and it's so like short and inoffensive that I keep watching it. And there's a new season of it, so I guess I'm just going to stick with that for a while. I could not possibly explain why you should watch it, but I'm watching it.
I can't believe you have a show that's like Sagrada Reset for me.
Look, sometimes we just watch things and we don't know why.
I agree with that.
I can't possibly say that it's ironic, because it's not ironic. Like, ironic liking a thing or ironically watching a thing still gives it numbers. I just want to understand, kind of, like, what the angle that they're going for is, because like each season has been something radically different, so I don't know. But that's the end of the very interested list. And boy howdy, there's some cool stuff, and even in the sort of interested, there are things that just like don't pop up quite as often that are going to be interesting. In the sort of interest list, we start out Gamers. Gamers is a light novel series about a video games club in high school. It just seems like they say it like a chaotic romantic comedy. And it's like 5 characters, 3 girls, 2 boys, and I guess they just like game out or whatever. And it's about like people who don't want to be seen as gamers because they're popular or whatever, and people who are full on into the lifestyle. And like, you could do something with that premise, and I'm also curious if it's the sort of show where they're going to be licensing real video games for it. Like Nana Nuzberry Treasure or High Score Girl, where they're like getting the licenses and they're going to show real game footage, or if they're going to have to make up video games for them to play. And both of those make me really happy as an idea.
I don't know which option would be more amazing to see them just like...
straight up see like Tekken footage in this anime.
I've already seen Tekken footage in something else.
But it's good. Like Gamers could be just like really trite, but I'm hoping it's like just a little above average enough to be like worth watching. And it's hard to tell because the studio Pine Jam before this hasn't really worked on much anything of note, so I'm not sure now, but there's an opportunity there for at least something a little bit above the cut, and that's what I'm here for.
All right.
Next up as well, Zane is maybe smarter than me and doesn't try to watch a whole bunch of stuff at the start and just wait for other people to talk about it, but that's not me. I can't live that life. So next up is Suredure Children, which really, just by the PV, looks like a really cute... They're 15-minute episodes, and I think they're all just going to focus on a different, like, set of... Or there's, like, 4 couples in it, and it's just going to focus on each of them per episode. And it just seems like this kind of cute slice-of-life sort of romance thing. And I'm really into that because there was one last year... that was like 2-minute shorts based on like this picture book that someone had put out of just like domestic situations between couples. And it was good, but like short and didn't really get to flesh out these characters. So I'm interested in seeing how something like 15 minutes could change the way these like very small, intimate moments work for these characters. And also the gimmick is that basically, what if the boy was the tsundere? Which is just enough of like a twist on the formula to be like, yeah, give it to me.
Oi.
Look, they've got one gimmick, and it's what if the boy was the tsundere?
I can't believe that's the gimmick.
Well, for at least one of the couples. I don't know about the rest of them, but the one that they showed in the PV, like, that's his one gimmick.
The name seems awfully like tsundere, though.
Yeah, that's the Suredure, is like, it's a portmanteau, but... Then next up is one where I feel like this premise fits in this really specific spot in like the early 2000s or late 90s, where like I feel like a lot of those like live action like Nickelodeon shows for like teens we're talking about, which is like quiz championships. Like that thing where you take a team of 3 and you're basically just answering trivia between high schools. So the show is called 703X Fastest Finger First, and it's literally just about a high school club that joins like competitive quiz championships. And that is enough of a different, again, like sports-like premise to be something that could be really interesting to play into what goes into practicing for this sort of thing and the sort of reflexes and stuff that goes into being good at this particular type of format, which seems, I don't know, it seems cool. I'm interested to see if this is good or not, because it's based on a manga and I've never heard anything about it, but that's not too surprising in the West. So I'm interested to see what they do with something that's maybe a little closer to like gambling but for kids, you know, that sort of split second sort of reaction and stuff.
I'm also sort of interested in this show, and I think, like, the only thing I hope for, other than it being, like, extremely hot-blooded quiz stuff, is that they use this opportunity to teach some really interesting facts that people would, like, not know about otherwise, because I feel like that's a big part of quiz shows.
Yeah, like, it very much takes that sort of, like that Jeopardy sort of vibe, where you're gonna learn something. And, like, it's just gonna be, like, kind of weird, esoteric knowledge, and you could do something really interesting with that.
Yeah.
There's also this next one that's weird, but I kind of have high hopes for it because it gives off vibes of other shows. It's is the Vatican Miracle Examiner, which is a story of a scientist and, like, a cryptanalysis expert who work under the Pope to travel the world and investigating the authenticity of, like, claims of miracles. And, like, immediately it gives off this sort of, like, not quite Hellsing, but that sort of, like seinen, kind of, like, Victorian vibe to it that is very interesting, I think.
Do you know if there's actually going to be, like, weird do they actually have weird powers or anything, or is this just grounded in reality?
It says supernatural, so I'm assuming there is some sort of, like, miracle versus superpower kind of thing going on here, but I don't know much about it. There's not a lot of information about this series, despite being a novel series and a manga series. But I don't know, it seems like it has a lot of potential to be very cool too, because it puts it in a place and time that is interesting and not really explored, especially in Japanese culture, is like, this is taking seems to be taking a very, like, Catholic view of stuff, whereas a lot of Western religion is used mostly for, like, symbolism stuff in Japanese culture.
I mean, maybe it's just because I'm playing this recently, but I'm curious if this is going to be, like, Professor Layton-esque twists, where it's like the way the miracle works is even more convoluted than if it was actually a miracle.
Right, like, if the miracle is based on, like, someone with superpowers or this really elaborate scheme to try to, like, bring in this authenticity, which is maybe part of what, like, kind of makes me think of Hellsing with it, is, like, it's first of all taking this very Catholic look at stuff, because Hellsing was also very Catholic, but also, like, the idea of this supernatural seems right in that vibe of sort of, like, Victorian era violence and stuff that might be interesting depending on how they take this. But, like, the PV is a lot of static stuff, so it's hard to tell right now.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about it, though.
Me too.
Like, it sounds like a cool premise. And then the next two on here are sort of interested, but neither of us are watching it, but maybe something we're going to keep our eye out on. And the first one here is Chronos Ruler.
Yeah. Mind if I explain?
Yeah, go ahead.
Alright, so Chronos Ruler is apparently about these characters called Chronos Rulers who all have time manipulation powers, and they fight against these time-eating demons that come about when people wish, I wish I just had a little bit more time for this. And apparently it's like, there's a bunch of time manipulation going on between the time-eating demons and the Chronos Rulers, and that just sounds like a ridiculous enough premise with cool enough powers that I hope it turns out really good.
Yeah, like, the PV shows some kind of dope action and stuff going on with it. Like, it looks pretty good, and that sounds like a premise that you can really play with in a lot of interesting ways.
Yeah.
And maybe I guess something that comes across like it is kind of like D. Greyman in the way that, like, the fighting and the character design works. But I'm really interested in this because it also is going for, like, this weird, like, very Western vibe with the characters, and I'm curious how that's going to play out.
Yeah.
I mean, the main character's last name is Putin, so, you know.
Oh my god.
They're pulling from these different, like, places and stuff, and it could be really neat. It could also be a hot mess, but who knows?
Either way's good, honestly.
And this next one, it could be really good, or it could be just, like, unfortunately, like, weird and bad, which is Princess Principal. which is this 19th century, like, Victorian spy series where the gimmick is that the spies are, like, 15-year-old girls.
They're all high school students.
That sounds bad. But, like, it looks like they're really playing into some, like, crazy spy shit. Like, legitimate spy stuff, like, almost Joker game-esque, but taking place in a very different time.
Yeah, the PV makes it very clear that they are leaning into these girls are spies and do actual spy stuff.
Yeah, like, it's definitely also playing into, like, oh, they're cute moe girls, but they're like shooting people, like people are dying in these PVs in like really gross ways. But it seems super built into sort of that pulp spy sort of stuff, which the juxtaposition could be really neat or it could be really horrifying, both of which kind of work. And my only hope is that it just isn't like really gross. Because that would be a real shame.
Yeah.
In an anime where like spy stuff is not the norm.
Yeah.
It's nice to have more things that can pull that off.
Yeah, I really hope this turns out to be pretty cool to watch and not surprisingly gross.
But yeah, Princess Principal, I don't know, it's like, and they're each supposed to have like their own like expertise, like I'm sure one of them is like stealth and stuff and like surveillance. So, you know, it is really playing into this sort of like team, again, kind of unlike Joker game where it's individual spies and individual adventures, like they're like a group of characters that work together. So I don't know, it could be really cool, and my hope is that it is in fact cool. Or at the worst, okay. I just don't want it to be bad. And then next up is the maybe, maybe not stuff. This is, like, for the stuff I put on here, it's like, I'm keeping an eye on it, and it would take a lot of stuff to get me to watch these over the things ahead of it, but still something that interests me and assume you in some way or another.
Yeah.
And the first one here is Mahojin Guru Guru, which is a revival of, I think, an 80s manga that had an anime, and it's like, what is it? The hero Yoshiyuki and what's the Dragon Quest parody live action series?
Oh, I know what you're talking about, but I don't remember the name of it.
Like the hero Yoshiyuki and the Demon Castle or something like that. It's this live action parody of like Dragon Quest tropes and stuff. And this is sort of similar in that it is a parody of like RPGs, like dialogue boxes pop up and the narrator does this does like NPC dialogue instead of actual characters. Like there's an element to it that gives off this very similar vibe of parodying RPGs while still being like way into them. That seems cool, and I think like Ushi and Tora.
Oh, yeah, Ushio and Tora
is the one I was thinking of. Like, that is also a thing where, like, the anime petered out early when they originally did it, and they got this revival series that they were able to finish the story with. And I think it's cool, the ability to do that now, is, like, be able to take these maybe beloved or, like, seminal franchises from whoever knows how long ago and try to modernize them for another audience just through the quality difference of modern anime. So, Guru Guru might be something interesting to check out. I just don't know if it's going to go the way of, like, you know, like some 50-episode huge thing like Twin Star Exorcist or something more smaller. But, like, I don't know, it's cute, it seems charming, and I'd be interested to hear what opinions of it are once it's out.
I think it's an officially licensed parody, too, because Square Enix was one of the sponsors in the PV.
That's charming. I'm glad that like Square Enix seems to be into this, because again, that Dragon Quest live action one I think is also part of theirs since they use the official names and stuff. But yeah, that's cool. Then next up is A Centaur's Worries, which you had put on here. You want to describe it?
Yeah, sure. A Centaur's Worries is basically if you watched Interviews with Monster Girls, it's basically that same sort of thing, except there's no male teacher in here.
There's no interviews for the Monster Girls.
Yes, it's basically just a slice of life anime about monster girls and just them, doing stuff. That's basically what it is. It's a little bit horny, like Interviews with Monster Girls could be, but apparently it's mostly pretty chill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like it's definitely like what does it mean to be these sorts of things rather than just like, oh, these sorts of things are in. It's certainly going to be like, how hard is it to be a centaur in school and like getting clothes done and sitting and all that. And then I assume they're going to play that with other like succubi characters or like other sorts of like weird monster characters.
I think one of the main characters is like an imp, and I forget what the other main character is, but it's the centaur girl, an imp girl, and someone else, and those are the main like trio.
Yeah. I know, but it'll be interesting to see, because I did hear really good things about Interviews with Monster Girls in terms of that sort of exploration of what it's like to be a monster girl. So there's hopes for this.
It's also a bit different in that everyone is some type of monster person, unlike in Interviews with Monster Girls, where it was just like a couple of people out of the whole class.
Right, get those sick humans out of here.
I don't think there are any humans, or at least I didn't see any in the PV.
Yeah, I think it does say all the classmates are some kind of supernatural creature. And again, you can pull all kinds of cool stuff, like how Interviews with Monster Girls had like Dullahans and stuff. Like there is a huge breadth of them to be picked rather than just like the typical like vampires, werewolves sort of thing. And even centering it around a centaur is like, oh, that's pretty cool. So there's some opportunity there.
Yeah.
This one is... this one I don't know how much opportunity there is, but it's certainly a take on the isekai genre, which is in a different world with a smartphone.
Maybe one of the most blunt titles I've ever seen.
In a season of blunt titles, this is very blunt. And in a fantasy world with my smartphone is about a guy who gets transported to a fantasy world, and God lets him have one thing, and he decides he wants to bring his smartphone.
His mystical wizarding slate.
Right, which is still allowed to connect and stuff. Like, don't worry about it. It can connect to the internet and stuff. It's great. And all the apps. Which, like, isekai is a really stuffed genre, and really, people are just looking for gimmicks to try to get people to get in. Like, there's that one where the guy turns into a vending machine in a fantasy world. And there's the one where the guy turns into a sword in a fantasy world.
I've seen one where a guy turns into slime.
Yeah, like it's basically, it seems like it's just going to be sort of a thing where these people have trouble and he basically just solves it by looking some shit up on his smartphone. Which, maybe. I think this is a lot lower personally on my, like, interested in list, but it's something just I would like to hear people talk about. Like, I want to follow the people who have to, like, review this episode by episode more than I want to watch it.
I want to know exactly how stupid this premise turns out to be.
Oh man, it's gonna be so stupid. It's gonna rule. On that angle. And then we have Made in Abyss, which is... It seems like it's a darling. Like, a lot of people seem really excited about this based on the manga. About this duo of characters exploring the Abyss, which is like this huge pit and cave system that is considered like the only unexplored place in the world. And from what I understand, it's like, it is very mature in that it is like violent and deals with like very big themes, and it's kind of like explicit. And so I don't know how comfortable I am with that, especially with the art style being so, like, cutesy.
Yeah, is that going to be like a juxtaposition sort of thing? All these awful things happening to these charming-looking characters?
Yeah, like these, like, weird chibi blobs. I don't know. I don't know anything about the actual source material. I just know that people seem really excited about it right now, which... maybe that means that there is something good to be mined from it, like from the manga. So this is definitely something to keep my eye out for, but like that juxtaposition is not always something that like works, especially just for me. So I'm hesitant on it.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. If you want to say something more about Made in Abyss.
The only other thing I wanted to say was like the leads are like just some girl, but the male lead is apparently a robot.
Yeah, like, she finds this robot in, like, one of the early parts of the Abyss. And she just wants to be a cave raider like her mom. So there's a plot to go there. And we'll just have to see how that turns out.
Yeah.
But on the other end of the spectrum, again, more light novel shit. We got Knights and Magic, Knight apostrophe S. And here's the thing about it. Why Knights and Magic is here and not anywhere else is because that title's bullshit. It's a mecha show.
Yep.
It's a fantasy mecha school show. And I guess that is, you know what they say, magic is technology or whatever. And I guess you could call them Knights, but it's just like so off-brand as a name.
It kind of rules, and I want to know where they take this.
Yeah, Mecha Otaku is reincarnated into this world where mecha is real. Great. You can make it work. Thanks, Studio 8-Bit. And like the designs are nice enough. Like they're not super booby. They're I think well done. Like maybe Star Ocean-esque like character designs and outfit designs.
Star Ocean before 4, I assume.
Yes. And then the next one is, I guess it's another world, but this is a very different take on it. This is Restaurant to Another World. And the format of this is basically there's this restaurant, and during the week, it's just a normal place where businessmen come to eat. But every Saturday, they close their doors, and the door actually opens into a portal into a fantasy world. And it's just this restaurant where these fantasy characters and creatures come to eat and talk. Maybe a little like Bartender, the series, or maybe just like the non-game parts of like Death Parade. That gives off that very similar sort of vibe where it's these people in this very like traditional, grounded setting talking about sort of this fanciful stuff and just really getting to explore a world via the tales that they talk about.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be a neat slice of life kind of show that could just be about like delicious food and interesting conversations.
Yeah, you could do a lot with it, and it's just like I don't have the information to say whether it's good or not, but it's got some interesting promise to it just based on that. Is like there is something interesting about peeking into other worlds without seeing the visuals that go along with it. Just the way they interact with others. And anime food always looks great.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. And then we have Project Altair. And you want to talk about this one, since you put it on this high in the list?
Oh, so apparently it's some high-ranking official in this fantasy nation gets assassinated, and it's basically about, like, the political situation and the war situation that unfolds from that sort of action, so it's sort of like a fantasy war? I'm not sure, like, how low or high this fantasy stuff is, but it seems like it could have, like, some interesting premise, like, if this is a war with wizards, we would actually get to see, like, wizard war or whatnot, and it seems like it could have, like, interesting tactics and stuff like that, and none of the character designs seem really fan servicey, so it could be just, like, a straight take on that sort of situation.
Yeah, this gives off a vibe. It takes place in Turkey, which is, I think, something that's cool, because that then builds off of the way that the characters are designed. And there was Yona of the Dawn 2 years ago that also kind of did that because it was based around like the Korean side of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms kind of stuff. And so a lot of the aesthetics were distinctly non-Japanese, which is cool. And if they're doing it based on like Turkey and like Middle Eastern stuff, especially fantasy Middle Eastern, there's a lot of interesting like that is an untapped mine that you could really get into, is sort of this very particular place and time. And like the main character's design really gives that off well.
Yeah, it seems like it could be a neat little series.
Yeah, it's always hard to tell with sort of the like big fantasy adventures, especially like, oh, are they going to end it, right as the story really starts? But there's some potential there. It seems cool. Kind of like the heroic legend of Aslan.
Yeah.
Arslan. Which is also based on like a Middle Eastern story. I believe Persian. And so like, again, just like being able to build off of these non-Western, non-Japanese sources is really cool. So here's hoping for something cool out of Altair.
Yeah.
Then I have this I maybe shouldn't have put this up as high as I did on the list. But, Cleanliness Boy Aoyama-kun kind of gives off similar vibes to, like, Haven't You Heard I'm Sakamoto? Which I think is pretty well regarded as a comedy series of just, like, this normal guy who gets into these very not normal situations and does them perfectly because he's a perfect boy.
Sakamoto was done, like, they animated the whole thing.
Yeah, and that was also cool. Because he went to space. I assume that would have been a climax. You know, there's, at some point you can't keep ramping up the stakes. But, Cleanliness Boy Aoyama-kun gives off a kind of a similar vibe where this kid is a soccer genius and his whole gimmick is that he never wants to get dirty. So he will purposely avoid, like, shaking hands and high-fiving at the end of a game. He'll purposely avoid doing any moves that, like, get him dirty or make him touch the dirt. So he'll do these super elaborate moves to be able to not do that. He, like, forces himself to wear gloves if he ever has to touch the soccer ball with his hands. And there is comedy to be mined from it. I don't know if it's just going to be like a cute boy doing silly things sort of thing, or if it is really going to go hard into it like a Sakamoto. But I don't know, there's a potential there because also soccer still isn't like a really tapped or like well-regarded sports genre in anime.
I mean, there was an Azuma 11.
Yeah, you could call that soccer.
It's kid soccer.
Soccer exists. They do kick a soccer ball into a black hole to close it. You know, there is soccer attached to Inazuma 11. But I think you could really just make it like a schoolyard brawl where people just go, nuh-uh. I summon a dragon that shoots the ball into the goal, and it would be equivalent. But yeah, you're right. The next up on here is 18 If, which is based on a mobile game that is vaguely like Puzzles and Dragons-esque in gameplay, but like the main thing is, it is a story of people who are afflicted with a coma, and inside they're stuck between the realm of the living and dreams, and this is where sort of their base desires are let loose and sort of take over this alternative dream world. And the concept is just these people go in to sort of like fight against these repressed desires from these people in real life and try to bring them back. And like I played it a little bit just to understand what this is. And like that is a concept that is potentially interesting, but is a little heady in a way that I don't know how you make that really interesting.
Chorps, it sounds like you're talking about Persona.
It is kind of Persona. It has a style like Persona. So I don't know how they're going to handle that, because again, all the fighting is Puzzles and Dragons-esque. You take your monsters in and you connect gems together. I mean, the Puzzles and Dragons anime just made them do that in real life out of nowhere, so I don't know. But I don't know, 18F has a potential to be, like, it has like these very psychedelic kind of like Persona-esque stylistic vibes to it. I just, also I don't know if Gonzo can handle doing something this like, this sort of like stylistic, It'll be interesting to see. I just want to hear other people talk about it first.
I'm glad you looked up information on the phone game, because that preview didn't really tell me much of anything about it.
Yeah, like, the most I got from the PV is like, oh, Teddy Lloyd is doing music for it. Great. Then we have RoboMasters, the animated series, and it is based on an actual student robotics competition that happens yearly. The world's biggest student robotics competition, in fact. And it seems like it's just following these different high schools as they prepare for the RoboMasters thing, where they're building these robots to do specific tasks, like be able to, slot something into a tall tower, or be able to do, like, rudimentary combat. Like, that sort of low-level robotic stuff is something that is avoided for a lot of, like, cool mecha shit. And I think grounding it in sort of this real thing, and possibly, like, real stories, is something that could be really interesting.
It sounds interesting.
Yeah, and I just don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't know if it's going to be predominantly character-based, or if they're really going to put a focus on what it's like to build robotics out of, these parts that you're able to salvage. But there's a potential there that I'm not going to see it through myself to start, but I want to know what other people start thinking about it as it goes on. Low-level robotics is still cool because it's so far beyond the imagination of what you could actually make. So there's a cool potential there.
I agree.
This next one, I have no idea what to expect, but I like the visuals. And this is one without a translated name. It is Cleone no Akari, which is about this group of 3 friends, and one of the girls is an orphan who is constantly bullied and very sickly. And one day she doesn't show up to school and is admitted into a hospital. And after some time passes, her 2 friends receive this mysterious email with no sender that tells them to go to this summer festival taking place in a nearby town. And there have been plenty of very heavy character-driven dramas coming out recently. Kyoani just released a Silent Voice movie. And this gives off something of a similar vibe in that it focuses around sort of a bullied character who clearly has some misunderstandings about her. And I don't know, there's a potential there, but there's nothing really to go by with a PV and just a description like that.
Yeah, I tried to watch that PV and I didn't really get anything from it. I don't know where this is trying to go or what. It's got a more serious vibe to it, but I'm just not sure what it's trying to be.
Yeah, it's really hard to tell. There's just nothing really that you can tell from just the PV, for sure. That PV is just a bunch of assorted scenes, really. Then we have the newest season of Symphogear, AXZ, which is a pretty abstract and sort of restrained subtitle after the last season was Symphogear GX Believe in Justice and Hold a Determination to Fist.
That rules?
Or the previous season, In the Distance That Day When the Star Became Music. Or the previous season, Meteoroid Falling, Burning, and Disappearing Then. Symphogear is, as far as I understand, stupid, slightly fanservice-y action, where they're punching meteors and shit in space and having these crazy, power suits fights between each other set to, some really pumpin' music, is as much as I know about it. It's, very music-based, and, lyrics matching up with fights choreography.
I know one thing about Symphogear, and that it is written by the person who wrote all the Wild Arms games.
Wow! That's a real turn, I feel! Wild Arms always felt a lot more restrained than Symphogear.
I mean, I'm not sure. Having played one Wild Arms games and seeing an LP of a couple more, Wild Arms gets pretty unrestrained towards the end.
Yeah, I guess so. There is a lot of wacky shit to it. But Symphogear, I just can't put I can't put it any higher because I would have to watch 3 other seasons of anime to get caught up to it. So it's a hard sell on just how much research goes into it.
Yeah, I've heard Symphogear is pretty good though.
Yeah, it's if nothing else, it's fun. This one's on the list just because. Okay, so Kobini Koreshi is a story about a bunch of people who hang out in convenience stores and love eating convenience store food and stuff, which gives off a vibe not unlike Sanrio Boys, which is eventually getting its own anime. And Sanrio Boys is the story of... It's Sanrio created characters who really love other Sanrio characters, like My Melody and Hello Kitty and stuff, and is super masturbatory, but clearly working, because it has this whole multimedia thing going about it. And this feels the same way, where it's not because this isn't a Japanese company, but a 7-Eleven equivalent would be we really want kids to know about what we do here, and we really want them to buy into this industry. And so they're making this anime about people who love hanging out at the convenience store and become friends because they have this similar interest in hanging out in the front of a 7-Eleven eating ice cream or whatever. It's
I just kind of thought it was just going to be some kind of generic slice of life thing of teens loitering in convenience stores and talking about nothing.
Right, which also, this seems like that. But I don't know, this seems like almost too pointed of an idea to not be, like, funded by a convenience store.
I mean, there's already a convenience store that makes a whole bunch of ties in with Japan at making some of the cute anime girls wear their worker outfits.
Oh yeah, they had a couple Love Live characters do that and stuff. Yeah, you're right. It's just weird. I wouldn't watch it, but it's just weird. I don't know, the sort of like way that anime has super become commercialized in a way that I feel like a lot of American cartoons haven't is something that is endlessly fascinating, I feel.
Is it going to be more fascinating than someone pulling out a literal Kit Kat bar and then doing the Kit Kat reference? Jesus Christ.
Oh, Sagrada Reset owns. They also did that in, Alice to Zoruko. They had a part where someone is, like, really losing it on a battlefield, and so he eats a Snickers to power up. Anime product placement is so much more direct, I feel, than, like, American in that way.
Unless it's like Darkened Sky, where your magic was powered by Skittles.
Oh, man. Oh, that's so good. They just never say Skittles, but it's very clearly Skittles.
Yep.
Okay, then next up is Hitori Jime, My Hero. I put this on a maybe, maybe not, just because, like, I think it's good that less problematic boys love and, like, LGBT, like, anime and stuff is coming out. Because for a while, and, like, even up till last year, a lot of the series that they're pulling from are these things that are big sellers because they're very taboo and ultimately, like, come as very, like, gross and, like, a misrepresentation of these sorts of relationships. And from what I understand, Hitori Jime, My Hero, comes from an author who is doing really good work in those genres to kind of, like, make good LGBT representation in, like, manga and stuff. So I'm just always glad when something that looks like it is a better sort of series comes around.
I'm glad it exists, and if it is apparently actual boys' love, they aren't going to beat around the bush about it, which is something that's I think several animes have a problem with doing.
Right, this is very explicitly boys' love. But, yeah, it is definitely like I don't know if I'd watch this, but I'm glad this exists because this opens the door for more things like this to exist instead of, like, Super Lovers, which got 2 seasons. Like, don't. But, and then the last one on here is Hell Girl, which, again, it's on here because there is a bit of a prerequisite into getting into this new Hell Girl series after how long of a hiatus they've had. But it's half new episodes, and it seems like it's half sort of like, maybe it's built for people just coming in or old fans, because it is 6 what they call reminiscence episodes. And I'm not sure if that exactly means, like, they're just going to redo old episodes, or if it's going to just kind of be like a recapturing of those themes. But Hell Girl itself seems like a very cool series. The stuff that deals with the underworld in these particular sorts of ways doesn't always pop up. Like, it plays really hard into sort of the darker tones of it, which could be interesting.
Huh.
And I hear good things about Hell Girl, just in general. And now, lightning round, the not interested list. Gonna go real quick through these.
Heck yeah.
Second season of New Game. Didn't watch the first one, not super interested. It's a slice of life moe show.
So I've heard about game development.
Yeah, and maybe not perfectly accurate, but, you know, you gotta romanticize a little bit, because there's nothing fun about watching, like, 6 episodes of Crunch just for a game to get cancelled. Then next up is Ufotable's Token Ranbu, which, you know, Token Ranbu has been important at revitalizing museums and stuff, and clearly getting people really into the game with the Hot Sword Boys. It's just not me.
Me either.
And I don't know, Ufotable does good action, so if nothing else, they've got that to look forward to. Because the other Token Ranbu they did was real slice-of-lifey. So it's a nice juxtaposition. Next up is Awari Monogatari, the final season, I think, of the Monogatari series that needed to be adapted for anime.
I can't believe it.
I tried watching Monogatari and I get it, but it's not me.
There's other Gataris that are better.
Yeah, and there's just so much. There's so much Monogatari. Then next we have Aho Girl, which just looks like it's a 4-coma thing about this super wacky girl and her less wacky friends. This basically seems to be it, which, yeah, okay, yeah. Then we have Enmusubi no Yoko-chan, which is, I don't know, it's the story of yokai who
help people fall in love?
Yeah, something like that, or revive memories of dead loved ones, something like that. And it's just like, nothing about that super hits, like the art style or anything, and really the PV makes it look like a weird, like, battle action thing, so I don't know what they're going for. It was just, eh. And then we have Sayuki Reload Blast, which is some kind of, like, josei reinterpretation of the Journey to the West. But this is, like, the 3rd or 4th season of it, and it seems pretty, like, wacky in place of being, like, dramatic or more interesting, so it's just like, eh.
It's got a lot of content behind it.
Yes, for sure. And then we have Action Hero and Cheer Fruits. Not a lot of action, a lot more of the heroine and cheer. It's about a group of people from one particular town who really want to become the mascot for it because that's a thing in Japanese culture. And, like, there's a potential there to actually, like, discuss that, like, branding that has made, like, Japan so, like, to get people interested in, like, traveling and stuff, but, eh.
The way I read that description it seems like it's these heroine-type characters from all the different areas across Japan competing to become the top action heroine?
That might be true. Huh. So there's something to it, but just like,
It's weird.
Yeah. Then we have Hina Logic from Luck and Logic, or Hina Logi, which is this magical girl fantasy spin-off of that mobile card game anime from last year that just seems really whatever.
I tried watching an episode of Luck and Logic back when it first aired. It was pretty whatever.
And then we have Dive. Dive seems kind of like the new Free in that it's very based around these water sports and big buff guys, but, like, the art style feels really off-putting to me. And, like, diving as an individual sport seems a lot tougher to romanticize.
It's not free, and it's probably going to be really hard to try and be as free as it can.
Yeah. It is about, like, Olympics training, which might have its, that might be its gimmick, but just, And then we have Love and Lies, which it just kind of has, like, a unappealing art style, but it's about a world in which everyone is arranged marriage and, like, feelings of romance are not allowed, and these two people dare to fall in love in this world where that has become obsolete, which, And following that, we have Yokai Apartment no Yuga ni Nichijo, which is about a guy who moves into an apartment that is filled with yokai and a girl who can see them. Which, like, there's a potential there, but nothing about the presentation or anything leads me to believe it's going to be, like, particularly interesting.
Yeah, it just seems like it's just
Yeah. Next up is Battle Girl High School. There's a name where you know exactly everything you need to know from its title.
It's exactly what it says on the tin, and if you don't want to watch that, then there you go.
Great. Following that, we have Youkuso, Jitsuryoko, Shiju Shugi no Kyoshitsu-i. Please don't correct me. And it is a comedy about a meritocracy school, like in Kakegurui, but it seems like it's just based on, like, smarts and stuff, and basically the smarter you are, the more freedom you have at school, and it's about a bunch of idiots who try to make their way up the social ladder. And just, I don't know,
it doesn't seem like it has anything to its premise. It's just a school anime that takes place in school.
Yeah, and but it focuses on dumb people instead of smart people. That's its claim to fame, I guess. And then we have Musashi no, which is a sequel to a show from 2 years ago, which was it was the anthropomorphized train stations, Urawa no Usagi-chan, which I dropped because I got really bored watching it at some point, and I can't assume that the sequel is going to be much better. Following that is Kaito X Ansa, which is a sequel to an anime from last year that I thought was like a puzzle thing about a girl. It's like Nazukine or something like that. But this doesn't seem to be about any of that at all, so I don't know what happened, but I'm not interested. Then we have Marvel Future Avengers, which is, I guess, when did Marvel Pokemon come out? Was that 2014?
I think it might have been.
So this seems like it's a follow-up to that, where they couldn't get the kids into Marvel by making the superheroes Pokemon. So they've basically set up this thing where a bunch of youth are saved by the Avengers, and it turns out that their genes have been tampered by Hydra, so they become superheroes in the Avengers. It's done by Madhouse, so like there's gonna be some like visual quality to it, but like, man, I don't know.
It's a kids anime.
It is a kids anime, and it seems like the sort of thing where like I don't know. I'm just not deep into Marvel or DC enough to be like super interested in this. And from what I understand, the other Marvel anime have not been anything to like really write home about. So
that's what I've heard too.
So like, it's not wacky enough to beat Marvel Disc Wars, the Pokemon one, which was so bad no one even deigned to sub it by the end. And then there's Yamishibai 5th season, which is just a continuation of sort of like these small Japanese horror stories, which is cool, but just that's not what I'm looking for right now. And here's the most important part, which is the Poopoo garbage tier. These are the shows that are bad, and I just don't think there's any way to spin it so that they're like good. First one up here is Netsuzo Trap, which, get that romanticized cheating bullshit out of here. Just get that out of here. It's about two couples and the girlfriends fall in love with each other but still hang out with their boyfriends to save face or whatever. I don't know. I think that whole like genre of like Netarare and TR cheating is some horse shit. Then we have Nora, Princess, and Stray Cat, which like, it doesn't seem bad from the outset. It's like this little girl meets a girl from the underworld and they hang out and talk about it, but the first thing they do is they have one of the characters like talk about this adult magazine they found in the park, and get that sexualized children shit out of here. Following that is Skirt no Naka wa Ketamono Deshita, which is about a guy who dresses up as a girl and like tricks a lesbian at a college party into getting with him, and get that bullshit out of here.
There's so much garbage.
And the thing is, like, it's all like really bad. It's not just like Triage X where it's like, oh, it's just super horny and weird and bad. Like, these are all things that I feel like are kind of morally reprehensible in that like Arrow manga sensei sort of way, and that's my bigger issue with it, is just how much of it is like, oh, it's tricking a lesbian into becoming straight or whatever, and like, get that fuck out of here. Then we have Tenshi no 3P, which possibly not gross, but it is about an older guy who like basically makes Vocaloid songs, and then these grade schoolers show up and want him to teach them how to be in a band. And that's I'm not touching that one. That
just looks really weird.
It looks really weird, like that basketball one that's also some grade schoolers. Ryokubu, I think, is it. And it's just, that just gives off a lot of uncomfortable vibes right off, where maybe it's going to be good, but every sign points to it being bad. And then we have Hajimite no Gal, which is about a guy who asks out this fashionable booby lady at school, and she says yes out of nowhere, and then they hang out with a bunch of other big booby characters, including one who looks like 10, and just get that shit out of here.
Yep.
And that's all the anime, basically. I mean, there are some we didn't talk about, but I don't think a lot of those are primed to come over here anyways. But there's still some cool stuff to be found in here. Even the stuff that we're not watching, there's like a lot of potential for very cool stuff here, like Robo Masters as one of like putting a spotlight on this very weird thing, and like Welcome to the Ballroom doing that as well. And 703X, Fastest Fingers First. There's a lot of like niche subject matter that hasn't been touched that could really be elevated in anime, and it could be very cool the way they handle that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the season. Like the previous season, I think there's a lot of potential here, and even in the stuff I'm not watching, it's like, oh, there's stuff that I could go and watch and really give a shot to. Like I was not super hot on Winter, but I feel like the rest of the anime that's been coming out since then has been like really stepping up its game. Like I've found a lot more stuff that seems interesting and doing some cool stuff.
Yeah, I've generally been watching more stuff since Winter too. It's all been pretty neat.
Yeah, and so we'll talk about that more in the next episode when we go over our thoughts on this year's spring season. But until then, Zane, since you're new, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Zainzero, Xainzero. That's me. I shitpost a lot about things that I like, and that's basically what I do. Hi, that's me. You
shitpost a lot about, is this a zombie? I notice.
I
don't know if this is me conflating it, but I feel like you watch that a lot.
I have not. It has just not left my head because it's a terrible train wreck of an anime.
Incredible. And as always, you can find me at Chorpsaway on Twitter, CHORPSAWAY. And you can find the podcast at Coco_disaster on Twitter. We have cocodisaster.com. We have a side blog where me and friend of the show QB just write about whatever the hell we think about, which is at vanilla-blessing.tumblr.com. And yeah, from there you can find out what we're doing next, things that are coming up in the new season. You can find shows, information, and yeah, just check us out, and we'll be seeing you next time for the spring season review once that ends. But I've been Chorpsaway.
And I'm Zainzero.
And sweet dreams.